RevOps, where the learning never stops. Hosted by Sandy Robinson, she's leveling up your ops. From data to deals, she reveals how AI really pops. Real talk, real playbooks, no fluff, just jaw drop. So plug in, turn it up, let the insights flow. You're tuned to AI-powered RevOps, now let's start the show.
Welcome to another episode of AI-powered RevOps. Today I'm joined by someone who has pretty much become synonymous with modern revenue operations, Jeff Ignacio. Jeff is the founder of RevOps Impact, a RevOps consulting and media business. He's a leader who's helped build and scale revenue engines at both hyperscale companies like Google and AWS and high-growth startups, including Visier, Upkeep, and Forethought. He's a creator and instructor behind Unleashing Revenue Operations Impact program, where he's trained operators on how to design revenue systems that can actually scale to 100 million and beyond. I am so excited to have you here today, Jeff. I've seen you speaking at conferences. We've been connected for some time. Thank you so much for being on the show. Let's get this rolling. Tell me a little bit about your background, what you're doing with RevOps Impact, and maybe just a little bit of context there.
Yeah, so I'm running an independent advisory. I'm a solo fractional, at least for 2026. I've been an operator for over a dozen years now at both large-scale companies at Google, Intel, Amazon, and moved over to working with startups. That's kind of my sweet spot, that Series A all the way up to Series D. RevOps looks very different between each one of those stages. And then more recently, I've been really diving into GTM engineering and AI operations. So in addition to the strategy work that I typically do, I'm also really excited about this era of RevOps where you roll up your sleeves and actually get to touch new technologies.
I'm so excited too. I mean, GTM engineering, that's exactly what we're here to talk about, and your expertise in AI and revenue operations. Before we really dive into the weeds there, I wanted to get a little insight into maybe a fun fact or a personal interest that your work friends may not know about you.
I grew up b-boying or breakdancing and freestyle rapping, so very much a hip hop fan.
Oh.
And folks probably won't see that from the outside. But if you've been to RevOps AF and you've seen me karaoke, I always love to pull up a good Eminem or a Jay-Z song.
Oh yeah, I actually got to witness that when we were in New Orleans. So I did get to see you throw down firsthand. So I won't put you on the spot here, but maybe we'll ask for some clips afterwards. I'm sure there's some video proof out there. I'm sure there's some proof out there. I might have seen some posts. So tell me, how did you've been doing the AI thing for a hot minute, right? You are definitely an early adopter. And on this podcast, I think lots of folks are listening at every end of the spectrum. How did you dive in and get started with AI, even if not in RevOps?
Well, I think it starts with my previous background over at Google as a financial analyst. In fact, the data systems that we had in our backend were not very friendly looking user interfaces with a download button. In fact, we had to get really good at SQL querying. And then to automate a lot of the work that I did with mechanical reports that I had to produce on a weekly basis, I got really good at Python. So the Python and the SQL skills are actually really, really helpful when I get into working with some of these LLMs. So for example, when you're querying these LLMs like ChatGPT, for example, you'll notice that they're actually producing code in the backend. And that code in the backend is very similar to what I've been doing in the past, whether that was using Beautiful Soup to scrape websites, whether it was using NLP packages to parse through text and then develop reasoning, or if it was using a pandas library to do deep analytics. You know, that skill set that I had with Python and SQL carries extremely well with LLMs. And it doesn't mean that you have to be, you know, a coding savant. I'm not a coding savant by any means, but just enough to be dangerous. But if you are a coder, it doesn't mean that you have to have that skill set. In fact, if you're in revenue operations and your systems, you're touching the systems, you already have the skills that you need. In fact, you're very much systems oriented in your thinking. And that systems and design thinking comes in very handy with working with LLMs. And I've been working with LLMs, MCP, a lot of these new enrichment tools like Clay, these no-code, low-code automation tools like Zapier, N8N, Make. A lot of it is really helping me to build solutions where I just don't have the budget to buy solutions, particularly at the employers that I've worked with in the past and with the clients I'm working with today.
That keeps coming up as a theme, build or buy. And I know you mentioned Clay. That's obviously a buy approach, but there's a good amount of building within Clay too, and learning curve there and everything like that. So from your perspective, you took the build route with a lot of these different companies that you're working with from a consulting basis or even in your prior world. How do you recommend folks evaluate that within their organizations? Is it just strictly from a budgetary perspective, a skill? Like, how do you recommend people go about that?
Well, build versus buy comes down to total cost of ownership. And like any project management, you have this trilemma that you have to balance, which is cost, quality, and speed. Typically, you have to force some sort of trade-off across those three vertices. But with AI, you're actually able to maybe even not have to force a trade-off in some cases, especially if you're building on your own rails. But classically, most organizations buy because, quite frankly, it's just easier to deploy. You also get support. You
Mhm.
also don't run the risk of succession planning if and when you incur technical debt that's beyond the means of your succession planning. So, for example, if you bring in a revenue operator who has a specific technical set and then that person leaves the company, well, there's no guarantee that the next person you bring in has that same skill set. And so
Right.
you're leaving this technical debt that then needs to be managed. And so when it comes to build versus buy, it's a classic TCO conversation. You think of TCO when you're leasing or buying a car, you're doing the same thing with SaaS software, right? With build, you're buying the software. With build, you're leasing the software. With buy, you're leasing the software. Even though it says the word buy, you're actually leasing it from another company, right? So you're deploying all your workflows on a software that's third party. But a lot of revenue operators have that skill set. It's transferable. So when you're a company evaluating, you really should think through one, what's the upfront cost? Two, how much time is it going to take to set up? Three, if and when we get to a level of complexity, is this something that we want to continue maintaining? And if this person leaves, is that person a single point of failure? And can I bring on someone to take it on?
These are really great points. I think it's important to really understand where you are and have the leadership buy-in. As a consultant, I think it's a little bit easier to get leadership buy-in, right? Because they're coming to you and you're providing your expertise. But putting your operator hat on, how have you gone about that in the past?
It comes to a prioritization matrix on what capabilities we want to turn on. So, what are the things in our life cycle and in our strategy that enables us to move the needle, right? So, what are the vendors or tools that we should consider to help us execute our go-to-market strategy? That go-to-market strategy is what comes first, and then developing those processes and those playbooks. I have this framework that I'm rolling out called the sports framework. It's
Okay.
a holistic revenue operations mindset, which is strategy, process and playbooks, operating rhythms, your T metrics, which is your targets, your thresholds, and your trends. And then lastly are the systems. Most folks actually lead with systems. You would think the first S is systems, but in fact, I think it's strategy. So
Hmm.
when you have that strategy in mind and the plays you're going to run, you then need to start thinking about what's the infra and the technology that's going to allow me to successfully execute this. And so when you're evaluating vendors, it's about, well, here's the level of capability and quality we can get if we buy these specific tools. Here's a short list of vendors. And then you can either get a point-to-point solution or you can get a one-stop shop, right? Many of these solutions are all in one. And some of that you're trading off some feature parity for certain capabilities, but because it's all in one platform, you might be willing to degrade some of the feature set because you're getting great value for the price you're paying, right? So, like for example, HubSpot does a lot of things, right? It's a marketing automation platform. It's email, it's landing pages, list building, segmentation, working with your ads, reporting. But there are dedicated solutions that do each one of those as well. So when you're buying HubSpot, you're actually making the decision, I'm not going to buy these five other tools. Same with Salesforce, maybe even with Clay, right? A lot of these tools you're buying all in one solution.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value to that, but then at the same time, there are a lot of really cool niche tools out there that can augment some of these systems. We're seeing it right now, bringing in Clay, working Clay into Pardot slash Salesforce process, right? And so thinking about that strategy, starting with the S, I love that sports foundation. I think that's a really great acronym that you thought up there and framework, if you will, because it just with everything AI, the fundamentals are really the same, right? And how you're driving and leading revenue operations from your data to your systems, your people, your process, and all of those things. So, can you tell me a little bit about maybe a project you're working on now that the listeners may want to hear about?
I think the easiest one I'm working on now for a client is automating their outbound, right?
Okay.
So I use a pretty simple 4-step framework to create sequences. Sequences in the past were cooked up in the lab between product marketing, sales enablement, marketing, sales leadership, right? Creating that perfect copy. And then there's the scaffolding, which is the schedule, right? You have 7 steps over 30 days. You can decide if it's email plus SMS plus WhatsApp plus calling plus LinkedIn connection. So you can create that multimodal, that channel experience. But what goes into the sequences are very different. So the copy that you have for SMS is very different from the copy that you have for email. Then the subject lines, you can create A/B variations to test what works, what doesn't work. Now, creating that copy can take months, right? If you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you're going back and forth on, who's our target market, what's our ICP, who are the personas that we're going after. You have to create a list. That can also take a couple of weeks to go back and forth. Then you have to match it to your products and offers with your product marketing org, and then you have to find the right content, use cases, blogs to share as offers for your call to action. And so when you think about that sequencing, gosh, it used to take me like a quarter, maybe even
Yeah.
2 to launch a successful sequence. But now I just launched that in honestly minutes,
Wow,
which
that was
is
amazing.
insane. And so like I'll illuminate the audience on how I do it, right? It's you deploy an agent to do deep company research, and it's all in the prompt, right? Like, who is this company? How long have they been around? Who are the founders? Who's the executive team today? Based on their publicly facing information, what are the top 5 takeaways? What are some of their new product launches? Look at their job description, scrape the text, identify what technologies they're using. Then you can build what I call a baseball card. And I love sports, so like the sports framework plus the
That
baseball card
works.
reference.
That works.
But you
I
can
like it.
build a little profile. You can build a little profile on the company. Then you do the same exercise on the person, right? So you identify who is the person, go to their LinkedIn profile, have the agent grab all their information, look at who they've worked for, what titles they had, their tenures, and then you can identify different triggers. Like, for example, if you're selling to a CRO, like I'm selling to a CRO today and a CMO, and we all know that the compelling event is you have to get your shit in order or else you're out in 18 months. So those first 3 months are super critical. That's the
Right.
landing pad that you want. So if you can get the signals and the triggers to send you, hey, this person just joined a new company, their first 90 days, their priority is going to be figuring out what's up and what's down. And part of that is going to be their revenue operation strategy. Well, maybe they don't bring in a full timer. Maybe they bring in someone like me to
Mhm.
be contingent, right? Or to bootstrap them and be a bridge between their full-time hire. So that's the 2-step process: the company, the person. Then the third is identifying, what's on your carousel of offers. What's your value prop, first of all? What pains are you solving for? Like, why do you exist as a business? And then you match those 3 together, right? The company, the person, and the reason why you exist, like your values and offer. And then the fourth is getting down to the perfect messaging. Help me create a sequence. Here's your style guide, 100 words or less. Make sure that you lead with empathy. You talk about their pains. Don't talk about, my own company. Then you get to offering them value in the first 2 steps. Increase the level of the call to action from soft to hard and ask for a meeting. And then that way you can start to create automated sequencing. And that whole thing, the agents just run it in the background, and it's so quick.
That is that's great. Yeah, I mean, you could even a year, 2 years ago, that would take weeks, months to figure out and deploy. And how do you see the SDR role? Like a lot of that is, previously what SDRs did. I know there's outbound SDR companies. Obviously, agents are doing a lot of that automated sequencing. But how do you see that playing into things, that role? How do you see it evolving? And what do you recommend to your clients?
So if you have a large TAM and you have or you're a vertical SaaS offering, I think, and you're targeting the lower end of the segment, you can get away with an AI sending the emails out,
Mhm.
particularly to your lower level titles. But if you're selling to the enterprise and you have a strong penchant for maybe an account-based experience play, an ABX play, limited TAM, you may want to include a human in the loop. So
Mhm.
the AI can still create the copy even for the enterprise, but before you hit send, your human team should actually review it. And so where AI impacts the organization is that it takes away or at least augments the AI depth, the research depth that you and the quality of the research, and it shrinks the amount of time that you normally place in that step into seconds or I mean, sorry, minutes. And so when you think about that frontier of where reps spend their time, before it would be pre-call research, the call, after call note taking, count plan, which has pre-plan research, plan writing, plan presentation, opportunity management, right? So you have opportunity strategy, which is before the opportunity. That could be solo endeavor, or it could be a team selling approach with a solution engineer. Then you're running the play in your sales funnel, and then there's the post call, the post opportunity recap, the close loss, the post mortem. So a lot of that pre work can be done with AI, and a lot of that post work can be done with AI as well, up and down that entire activity stack. And that's super helpful because now you can shrink wrap the time for those bookends and then reallocate it to the actual time when you're spending with the prospect. And that's much more valuable, right? So we talk about bending the curve of where reps spend their time. You're spending 30% of time with external facing customer interactions. Well, perhaps we can make that 30% up to 35%. And then the quality of that 35% is just 2x, 3x what it used to be, because now you're arming and preparing your sales reps with deeper, richer, more personalized knowledge.
100%. I mean, I just think of the amount of research and information that we can put at a rep's fingertips now, where they can come to a call prepare and armed, and even maybe role play it with a bot beforehand, you know. It's really amazing. So how have you seen teams and companies that you're working with adopt these processes? So you're building them. I assume you're doing some level of implementation and training and hand holding, but how is this going over? How is the adoption going within the teams?
With one client, I've been drafting the emails with AI with a human in the loop process. And so the emails are actually going to a Slack notification. So the rep gets the lead notification. And not only do they get that lead notification, they get the draft email. So
Wow.
when they get that draft email in the Slack message, we're just asking the rep to copy and paste it in that one example. In another example, we're actually sending the data as a request into uh, a sales engagement platform. And that
Hmm.
sales engagement platform is creating a sequence.
Okay.
In the old days, you'd enroll 10 contacts a day into a sequence, and everyone would get the same email, and
Mhm.
they'd get maybe a personalized token, like hi, your name, and that's about it. A more advanced case study used to be you'd write a use case and a value prop in a field in your CRM, and then that would be a token as well. So it would appear very personalized. But now with AI, you can actually send an individual sequence that's unique to that individual. And so if you have 10 contacts, you have 10 sequences, and those 10 sequences have 7 emails. So you're writing 70 unique emails for those 10 individuals. That wasn't possible before.
And they're so much more customized and effective. And that is pretty much something that wasn't even possible. So it sounds like it's going well. Like, are you seeing, I don't know if you're getting on rep trainings, if you're seeing people, afraid of this or feeling threatened, or like, what is your take been with the boots on the ground, right? So it's one thing with leadership is usually like, yes, go do this, go do this. But then when you get down to the folks that are actually doing it, sometimes you've got people that jump on board and people that don't.
I'm finding with AI that it's no different from any other tool change management or process change
Mhm.
management. there's resistance, right? When you think through your change management approach, you're going to have resistance, and then you're going to have some of your early adopters, folks who embrace change. So there's a wide distribution of receptiveness to change. And AI, at the end of the day, if you widgetize it to, it's just another new change in the org to how you work. So when you think about how do you roll that out, you should think through pre-communication, who you should involve early, allies and champions for your change management process. And then you roll it out, you're really teaching what's in it for me, right? If you don't show the benefit and they don't get early wins, it's no different from a customer buying your software and not getting value within the first 90 days. If you're rolling out a new process, the org has to get benefit within that first, and maybe even shorter time frame, the first 30 days. If they feel the benefit right away and they see it, then they're going to adopt it because they'll tell you. Like I get Slack messages from, I got a Slack message from someone, from a client of mine, and all I did was build a lead routing solution, right? Lead routing is very simple. You give your territory rules, you put that into business logic. Lead comes in, you enrich it, follows the business logic, and then it figures out who it routes to, right? It's just like, what address should I send the mail to? Just that alone, I got a message from a rep saying, oh my gosh, I actually have never responded to a lead the same day I've actually been assigned a lead. It's like, okay, that's actually a bad sign for the business.
Hey.
But to get this message was heartfelt, right? Now imagine not only do you get the lead, but you get research on the company, the person, you get that baseball card profile I was talking about. Then you get email copy or SMS copy, or you get a thought partner in how you should approach that lead. That's, should be mind-blowing, right? But to a rep, they might say, well, I'm skeptical. Like, are you sure the AI is doing the right research? So they might even take the research and then do it again, just to verify
check
the AI
it.
is coming up with the right information.
Right.
Just check it. And it's fine. It's there's going to be levels of receptiveness in terms of adoption. You'll have folks who, embrace it and folks who are skeptical.
Well, that's some good advice too when it comes to how to get started. There's some low-hanging fruit out there, and I think optimizing inbound is a great example because there's so many data pieces that are simple to enrich. Just getting a tool like Clay or even building something like that in house with existing tools. Those are the things that are really low-hanging fruit. We're in the process of that now. Like we just put in a CRM like last April. So we're really, now we're layering in some AI workflows and things like that. And we're seeing some immediate benefit to just the data enrichment element and understanding our ICP and triggers and all that stuff. So what do you recommend? If somebody is on that earlier adopter side of things, how do you recommend somebody in RevOps get started?
I think the easiest thing to do is look at your existing vendors and ask them what's on their AI roadmap and what features are available today. So instead of learning something brand new, perhaps use the tools that you have already in place and get comfortable with some of the features that they have. So you have AI-powered features, particularly like, say, HubSpot, for example. A lot of folks may not know that you can actually create a field, which is a prompt. So in HubSpot, you can prompt the AI agent, ask it to create a field in the object, give it some description of what you're looking for, and it'll create the field. It'll actually do the work. Super useful, super helpful. Another thing is to get comfortable with APIs. So if you're a little stranger to like workflow automation, one of the easiest tools out there is Zapier. Zapier is super friendly to learn. And so you can actually send data via webhook over to Zapier and have Zapier do the automation. Now, if you're not comfortable with APIs, you can actually use like the embedded AI. So for example, Zapier has their own AI, which is just a wrapper on some of these other models that are out there. And so you're using your Zapier credits or your usage to, come up with the data that you're looking for and then write the data back. And so just, start small, right? Practice small and the small task, like for example, get comfortable with APIs, get comfortable with webhooks, get good at prompting. No matter what tool you're using, prompting is going to be extremely important. So when you think through the basic tools of dealing with these new AI use cases, that's really all it boils down to is really these use cases. And then a lot of folks who might be listening to this are probably in revenue operations. You're already really comfortable with workflows. So the idea of workflows and then using those three skills I talked about, very important to help develop your journey on kind of AI powered operations.
I love it. I love it. Do you have any resources that you recommend? Whether it's a post or a short class or prompting basics or something that you recommend people check out?
I'll name a couple of resources. I'll start with my own as a plug. Check out the revengine.substack.com, my Substack. That'd be one. I don't always talk about just AI, I talk about revenue operations.
Mhm.
Another podcast that I really love is Marketing Against the Grain, one of the top marketing podcasts that are out there. The CMO of Zapier and HubSpot are the host. They talk about a lot of great high level use cases that should give you an idea of like the imagination of what's possible. Um, Third, I think, is honestly YouTube. YouTube has a
Mhm.
ton of influencers who are building no code and AI automations that
Mhm.
you may not use their use case perfectly, but just seeing the art of the possible. And once you get that art of the possible, then like almost all good, revenue operators who are curious about technology, you're probably spending some time at night just playing around and testing your capabilities.
That's great. And we'll include the links in the show notes for sure. And plug your Substack again. Say that again.
Oh yeah, it's revengine.substack.com. It's the RevOps Impact newsletter.
Awesome. We'll definitely also include that in the show notes. So I want to get to the 5 rapid fire questions before we wrap here. I'm talking to all of my podcast guests for the rapid fire questions. These are the top questions that I found out there that revenue operations leaders are asking about AI. So I think you kind of answered the first one, but what's the very first place you tell a RevOps team to start with AI?
I say YouTube.
All
YouTube would
right.
be first
I
place.
like it. Is RevOps data actually AI ready today, or are most teams just automating garbage?
Well, that's a hot take. Well, first, dedupe the data, normalize it, enrich it, and then you can extrapolate and run data. Ideally, you're running analysis on first party, but if you have to, use third party or maybe even second party data.
I like it. I like it. What's one AI use case in RevOps you've seen actually work in the real world?
Churn analysis, right? And churn, it's one use case that I think is really interesting. I deployed an agent that tracks the transcripts of every customer call and then looks for specific triggers, categorizes it according to the primary churn loss reasons, and then scores it.
Ooh,
That's a really good use case.
ooh, that is a good one. I like that. How do you measure real ROI from AI in RevOps?
There's a couple of core metrics that I think are important for revenue operations. It's growth, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. If we are, product managers for developing the right infra and processes for go to market, those should be the right metrics. Some of those metrics are easily measurable in the short term. Some of them are not. They're more long-term metrics. So if you're in I think the very first thing to look at is, are you attaining your revenue goals? And the second should be, are you bending the cost curve in some meaningful way? So customer acquisition cost should also come down.
Great, great. Will AI replace RevOps, or will RevOps leaders who use AI replace those who don't?
I think AI will replace some of the boring aspects of our role in the short
Mhm.
term. In the long term, it may replace our role entirely, but we'll see.
All right, all right. I like that hot take. Well, I really appreciate your time today. You are really somebody who I enjoy talking to. I know that you've got just such great content out there. I've seen you speak. I've seen you at conferences. I follow your stuff, your newsletter. So please check out Jeff's newsletter and find him on LinkedIn. We'll include his LinkedIn link in the profile. But thank you so much, Jeff, for joining me today. This has been another episode of AI Powered RevOps, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you so much.